And welcome back to Dollars and Dragons. Today we have LegalKimchi. LegalKimchi, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hello there. I'm LegalKimchi, although you can call me Kimchi. I'm a YouTube video essayist who primarily makes video essays with regards to TTRPG topics and things related to that, although I kind of dabble in a couple of different things depending upon my mood. I have been a consultant on TTRPG products. I've worked on An Elf and Orc Have a Little Baby and its sequel as a sensitivity reader, and excited working with you in some upcoming projects we're going to talk about a little later, and very happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kimchi, for coming on. And just so everybody knows, Kimchi is an actual attorney who just kind of dabbles in the tabletop role-playing space, like many tabletop people, because it's kind of difficult to make a living within tabletop, which is actually a major topic of our podcast here, is figuring out how to make a living and like transform our hobbies into our full-time jobs. And with that being said, let's kind of segue, because not a lot of my guests necessarily have kids. I have kids, and I want to talk about with you like being a parent and being a content creator. And for you, because you work as an attorney and you have kids, what's your schedule normally look like, and when do you find time in order to create content?
I always felt that I would never sacrifice time with my kids for pretty much anything. Okay, like I would sacrifice time from work before time with my kids. Part of the reason why I stopped doing, because I used to be a trial attorney, is because I kept having to go to these areas all across the state. And I live in Texas. It's a huge state. So I'd be in hotel rooms, 300 miles away from home, and not being able to interact with my kids. And I was like, this is not what I want. So I switched jobs and kind of careers, in a manner of speaking, from doing trial work to doing like contract negotiation, because I wanted to be close to my kids. And the same was true for content creation. I never want that to dip too much into my time with my children. It helps that I don't sleep.
Sure.
like not in the sense of like, oh, I can't get to sleep. In the sense of like, I don't like sleeping.
Right. Spend more time with your children with this one easy hack.
I literally sleep 5 to 6 hours a night.
Okay.
I've experimented with trying to sleep less. Like I have looked into like polyphasic sleep and all this other stuff to try to sleep less and less and less. And I've come to realize that if I sleep less than 5 hours a night, but if I sleep 5 to 6 hours a night, I function absolutely normally. I don't get sick. I get enough rest, and I wake up naturally. So the time that I have is, generally speaking, between like 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. And some of that time I spend with my partner. We watch a movie or something like that. So if you're curious, if you visit my YouTube channel and you're like, hey, this person only put out like a video every 2 to 3 months, that's why.
Yeah,
because,
gotcha.
There's a lot of intensive work in content creation, and I want to make sure that it's of a certain quality. I don't have the amount of time that would allow me to keep churning out what I consider high quality content on a regular basis, like on a monthly or weekly basis. It's finding that balance and understanding the realities that come with that balance. My channel would be more successful if I was far more prolific, but that's a balance that I need to come to an understanding with, and where my priorities are. I love making content. I absolutely love making content. It's a passion of mine. My partner makes a joke where she states, your job is your job. Your career is content creation, because that's where your passions lie. And she knows that. She's incredibly supportive. That also helps. But it's just understanding the realities of time and how much you have or how little you have, and working with that. And you can get upset because you sleep, or you have video games you want to play, or books you want to read, or things like that. And that's fine. Just whatever makes you happy. And for me, it's producing videos.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of that is, especially when you get into doing it full time, like, what are you sacrificing? What are you giving up in order to do this? And I think especially when we're adults and we have kids, I have 3 kids of my own, and I don't spend as much time with them as like you do. I think I'm a little bit less hands-on as a parent. And that's just who I am. But I think that as far as like where I choose to use my time, that's an intentional choice. That's something that I have intentionally chosen for myself. I don't, for instance, play many video games anymore. And that's an intentional choice that I made because I'm looking at how much time would I be playing video games if I was playing them as much as I used to. And it would be 10 to maybe 40 hours a week. Like when I was younger, of course, as I got a little bit older and I'm like deciding, where do I want to be in 1 year from now? Where do I want to be in 5 years from now? And what do I have to sacrifice in order to get there? And what do I want to create that's going to make me feel a prolonged sense of happiness rather than distract me from the shitty job that I don't like anymore? You know what I mean? As soon as I made as much I did at my shitty job in content creation and being a pro GM, I quit my job right away. Not the wisest decision, but that's where like my heart has been, is I wanted to be a storyteller and like engage with people and build a community and stuff like that. So for you, I think your YouTube career I have watched with great interest because you remind me of someone like FD Signifier or H-Bomber Guy who creates these very interesting, like you write an entire paper essentially and then you turn that into a video form so that it's consumable, which I find to be very interesting. Who would you say that you base your style on and who you take inspiration from? Some
incredibly generous, wonderful people referred to me as like a philosophy tube of D&D. And
that's spot on, actually.
I wanted to crawl into a ball and just cry because that was so because she's been an inspiration to me for quite some time, which is really funny. The first time I started watching Philosophy Tube, I bounced off of it. It didn't hook me.
Right.
But I got into video essayist like most people, I would imagine, like with your Lindsay Ellis's and your ContraPoints and H-Bomber Guy. And, a couple of things coalesced at the same time. So I was a fan of this content, and I've always been a rather analytical person. And so I saw this stuff. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. I like this form of content. I didn't know this was a thing. This is a phenomenal design. It's a more engaging way of doing a paper. And I was always interested in kind of the area where different styles of writing meet. Prose, essays, like collections of essays and stuff like that. I was always interested in that because it always felt to me like you can say something that's not poetry and it's not a narrative, but it's not entirely like a history textbook or a textbook type. Entertaining prose that's not a story, like a fiction story. I thought that was an interesting way to go about it. I had always wanted to start a YouTube channel. There's actually a YouTube channel that I started like a decade ago with like a video on it, maybe two. I started with a friend of mine. We never made any videos for it. It didn't go anywhere. And, when we hit 2020, pandemic hit, and so many people were stuck, I needed something to do. Like so many people, so many YouTube channels came up from that. And so I was like, well, I could take a swing at it. And I didn't start making video essays. I started making videos that were just kind of D&D advice videos, like DM advice videos, inspired by people like Matt Colville and stuff like that. But I didn't want to regurgitate the same advice that other people were giving. And there were only a few things that I thought were really interesting ideas conveyed from my experience of like 20 years plus of DMing that hadn't been already tread by someone else. And so it was when Candlekeep Mysteries came out, and there was this big hullabaloo about there's a wheelchair accessible dungeon. And a lot of people got weirdly upset about that. I was like, why are people upset about this? This is weird. And all of the arguments that people were making were silly to me. And I'm a person who makes arguments for a living. Like, like that's my
You felt
background.
your calling right then. You felt it.
It was a moment where I was like, all of these arguments are garbage. I am going to point out why. And that was kind of the inspiration, because to be perfectly honest with you, I've thought of like just unlisting or deleting the first like 10 videos on my channel, because it really came into its own with that video where I was like, okay, this is what I should be doing, because I don't want to be just another face giving DM advice online. I think I can offer something else. That instigated making video essays, basically mixing the two favorite things that I have, which are like video essays and tabletop RPG.
A lot of YouTubers do that, though. Once they take their channel in a certain direction, they will unlist their earlier videos. Are you think you're going to keep them around for forever?
Like some of them, I will probably keep around for quite some time, and you know, it's almost nostalgic and funny for me to watch some of my older videos. Not that I watched many of my older videos before that time, but it was like it's weird because like when you talk to a video person, like a YouTuber, when I talk to other YouTubers, like watching your old videos, the thing that we talk about is like, yeah, I didn't quite get the lighting design right, and my audio was just unreal. It was
the technical stuff, yeah.
We always go technical. We're most of us are gearheads.
Yeah.
Literally, anytime I post about I'm filming, like I tweeted that I was filming my video the other day, and somebody posted, "Is like, what's your lighting setup?" And I was like, "Oh, I got two softbox lights. One is a rear rim light, and the first one is the main light, and then I have a fill light, which is an LED. You know,
yeah.
Like this is the kind of stuff that we get into. Video production is its own thing. You know, it's three different hobbies mixed to one. And that's the kind of stuff that I think about when I look at my old videos. I don't have a problem with what it was, but it was one of those things where it's like, would I watch this? Because I didn't watch a lot of DM advice videos because I've been doing it for 20 plus years. And, you know, once in a while I'll come across an idea I haven't heard of, but I'm kind of...
yeah.
I've been doing it for a while. Okay. Because I'm old. But and I've been playing this game since I learned how to read. So like I'm a second generation player. My dad taught me how to play. Okay, because he learned back in the day. And so like I don't watch a lot of DM advice videos. When the turn happened and I started making the video essays, I was like, I would watch this channel.
Right.
And I think that sort of passion, that sort of is something that translates. And I think it translates into the views as well. Because when I made that switch, I mean the views literally went 200, 100, 4,000.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's weird. It's like when you really double down on, and this is a basic like business thing that I always have to tell people, when you double down on like your strength, your passion, that really shines through to people. And when you do like what you're personally very good at and you love, like people really appreciate that for sure. And that's really cool that you were rewarded in that way. And you got your learning videos out of the way. What was it? Was it like a year or two before you made the wheelchair video, or?
It was actually not that long. It was like, because I started in October of 2020 and I made the wheelchair accessible dungeon video January of 2021.
Oh, okay.
So because it was a weekly cadence, I was releasing videos every week.
Right. Yeah.
But they were much shorter. They were like 5-minute videos or 8-minute videos. You know, because when you start off something like this, I don't know about you, I'm a researcher. I was researching everything. It was like thumbnails are important. Shorter videos do better because people can watch them, easily digestible and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, make it fun, make it poppy, all that. And I was trying to follow a lot of that advice. Some of the advice, great for reasons some folks don't realize when they're giving the advice. Like an FD signifier, I'll bring them up because you mentioned it beforehand. Like when you're a POC and you put your picture on the thumbnail,
right?
That's not always a thing that people click on.
Yeah.
You know, sad but true. So, you know,
I remember him talking about that specifically about in regards to the Bo Burnham video. He put his face on there for the first day, I believe, and then he A/B tested it with Bo Burnham, and of course Bo Burnham recognizable, but also white. Thing blew up. So I think it's because obviously if you say that you're talking about the Bo Burnham or whatever video, then people know what it is. Is it that people are racist?
Look,
that's it. I was like halfway through that question. I was like, no, people are racist.
Here's the thing that people, I think, need to realize about stuff like that. Are people racist? Yeah, people are racist. Does that mean that they're walking around with like white hoods in their closets or anything? No, not like that. You got to understand that when somebody says something like you're doing racist stuff or that's racist or something of that nature, that doesn't necessarily mean you're automatically a Nazi or something like that. It just means that, you know, hey, what you just did, conscious or unconscious, something you may want to examine, okay? Because what's the origin of it? Because I can say plainly, Like, if I was to look at myself 5, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, especially, I had many notions, specifically of like LGBT people, which would be homophobic or transphobic. So yeah, at that point in my life, and I wasn't going around committing hate crimes or anything like that or calling people names. There were thoughts and ideas in my head that I hadn't unlearned yet, that I was still ignorant about. So people need to stop getting so defensive when something like that gets said, and use it as an opportunity to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm right there with you. As a 13-year veteran of the Marine Corps, I have probably thought or expressed a lot of immensely like homophobic, transphobic, or racist ideas in my day. And that's just part of being, I think, culturally brought up a certain way. In my case, military is really, in a lot of ways, if not white supremacist, but it is built on the backs of those structures, just like a lot of the police establishments, and the way that it really forced. Because if you look at the spread of like, especially officers of color, and how like that whole dichotomy works, and how the traditions work and everything, it's old white guys. It's old white guys that built up the officer culture and like the military culture and everything like that. So, and a lot of what I remember now about being in the military and its culture was about erasing your sense of self, perhaps for a good reason in some cases, but other reasons there's no good justification for it. Like, for instance, what reason was there for Black women to not be able to braid their hair? Like, until pretty recently, there's no reason except racism.
Yeah, it's conforming to a standard created by a very specific culture. And anytime that you do that, you're inherently creating circumstances that are either discriminatory or give a predilection towards one type of person. And, you can use the military as an example, or the police as an example. You can use the law in courts and trials as an example. Like, why is it that we have to wear suits? Like, it's required. You can get thrown in contempt or thrown out of a courtroom if you're not wearing a suit and tie.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, it depends on the judge. But you can get
judge if they're cool or not.
Well, there were some judges where it's like, if you came in, you wouldn't have a suit, or if you didn't have a jacket and tie, that they would throw you out of the courtroom. Well, there's a couple of things that come of issue of that. One, jacket and tie, inherently Western European style clothing. If I was wearing traditional cultural clothing, it's considered cultural clothing. Like, I only should be wearing that on other occasions. I couldn't wear that to court. What do you think they wear to court? Or what do you think they wore to trials in other cultures at different times, And it also, gender presentation, being a cis male going in with a suit and tie, okay, fine, if we're going to conform, but, does that apply to non-binary people or gender fluid people? If I came in to the courtroom looking as I do in a suit dress, would that be allowed? A person who the judge would assume is a woman walks in like that, no big deal. But if I were to do that, and if that judge were to look at me, wait a minute, you look like a man, you should be dressed like a man, little things like that.
What if you were overseeing a case about, I don't know, let's say like drag rights? That would be considered to be a political statement, wouldn't it be?
I live in Texas.
So you're not going to do that? You're not?
I'm going to say it again. I live in Texas. There are many things that I love about Texas. That's not one of them.
Yeah.
Barbecue is phenomenal here.
Yeah. Okay. Riddle me this. What's your, as the crow flies, how far away are you from Joe Rogan now?
Oof. Well, I live in a suburb of Austin, so.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't know where his house is. I don't care to know where his house is. I did find out that I'm apparently in the same area as like Asmongold.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because he has a
PO
box listed on his Twitch page.
Okay.
And I was like, that's my post office. Like, that's the post office I go to.
Right.
Oh man, I might see this dude at HEB or something. I just want to get my Frosted Flakes in peace.
Yeah, I feel like Asmongold probably just orders everything or is very unintimidating in person. So I think you'll be good.
Who knows? I think I'm unintimidating, but people have told me that I'm somewhat intimidating, which is weird.
How tall are you?
I'm like 5'8".
Oh, okay.
I'm super average.
Yeah, average height. Yeah, average height for a masculine person. Yeah. Interesting. No, it's PJ. Intimidating. I think just means most people's minds is like serious, and like you're not necessarily serious all the time, but like I think you take a lot of care about what you say, and when you talk, it doesn't seem as casual. Because you are a lawyer, so it's how that's because you talk like that so often, that I think is why. But
Okay. You have to understand that there's a difference between content creation kimchi, live stream content creation kimchi, and me yelling at somebody in Call of Duty kimchi.
Yeah, I haven't been exposed to Call of Duty kimchi, so I mean,
Look, I heard an insult on Call of Duty that cut me. Man, you suck. You play like you had a good job, a wife, and 2 kids. And I was like,
oh shit,
too accurate. It was the worst insult I've ever received.
Wow. Right on the nose. Gotcha.
I was just like, oh my goodness.
Did you respond like, actually, I'm an attorney and I have a loving wife and children. Thank you.
No, I couldn't. I lost all of my articulation at that point. I was just like, too true. My life is fantastic. It hurts so bad. No, I mean, it's hilarious because I am terrible at video games because of what you said. Like, I don't play video games that much because I don't have the time. If it boils down to it, like, what am I going to do? I haven't read like a novel for fun months, almost years.
I listen to audiobooks.
Yeah.
That's my compromise.
I will occasionally listen to an audiobook, but a lot of the reading that I do is research for videos. So
I believe that. Yeah, I've seen the bibliography on your videos.
Like the academic papers, yes. Textbooks, literal textbooks. I have a literal textbook over there for an upcoming video, and I'm reading through it. It's like, I wasn't that kid. I wasn't that guy in college who's like enjoyed reading textbooks, but here I am, a grown person, buying textbooks.
How far you have fallen. College, you would be disgusted.
Unbelievable. Unacceptable.
If college you saw you right now, would they continue?
It's one of those things where, especially in the beginning of content creation, you have to realize the marathon. You have to realize that you're not necessarily going to explode instantly and be able to quit your job and pay your bills. I've been doing this for 2 years. I'm not even close. And people talk about, oh, wow, you have thousands of subscribers on YouTube. And I was like, yeah, I have like 6 that I made from that last month. Okay. It's kind of the classic. I have my job. I have my day job, and it allows me to do this. And would I love to make that turn? Would I love to be able to become a full-time content creator? Yeah, it would be amazing to be able to focus on that. I'd get a lot more videos done. I'd have a lot more content out, and I'd just have more fun during my day because I do enjoy it. It is work. What's weird is that, in this period for the last 2 years, I gave myself a job where it doesn't pay well, and I call it fun. There is still work. There is still time where I stare at the screen. I'm just like, I don't want to edit a video right now.
Yeah. No, I feel that super hard with writing and tabletop, and like when I said I was going to get into it and like doing shows and things like that, and it's not always easy, or sometimes I have to force myself to keep going. And, with the projects that I'm doing, and like me doing now the website and the podcast and the newsletter and everything, it can be a lot, especially because of the day job. And like, how do I find the ability to disconnect and come back and still be passionate about it? I saw Jasmine post about this pretty recently, and she said, people ask me how I maintain motivation. I just, come back when I feel motivated again. So I think for a lot of people, if they're going to go that route and they're going to go into content creation specifically, or a creative life, I should say, in general, it weeds people out by itself. Like, the only thing you have to prove somebody to is yourself, because it's you. It's a very lonely occupation. It's a very lonely endeavor.
It is. Like, my content creation is a solo project, and you don't even think about all the different decisions that go into any creative project. Like, anytime you watch a video on YouTube, every second of that video, every image on the screen, every sound that you hear is intentional, is not random. It's a choice. You're seeing a million different choices every minute of a video. For me, I don't have a production team. It's just me. My camera person, a tripod,
Yeah.
Like I set up my lights, I set up my camera, I sit down, I get in costume designed by me.
Have you joined the union yet? You should.
This owner, he's not allowing as many bathroom breaks as he really should.
No, you haven't started peeing in bottles yet, have you?
No.
Yeah, my boss really needs me to get this video done. Can't leave.
But and the editing process, the writing process, the research process. When you look at people like H Bomber Guy or Philosophy Tube or whatever, that's a team of people sort of behind the scenes, and a lot of the work is done by the individual on the screen. There are a team of people there, and it's like a production company. You look at Critical Role, it's like a production company.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not there yet. It's a production me.
Yeah.
And that's, people are like, why? Yeah, I wish you would make more videos. Me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember going through this process when having this growth spurt with Jasmine when she was looking for a little bit more help because she was right at the cusp. She needs to hire someone in order to meet her demands because she gets pulled in so many different directions for all these different gigs, like as a host. And then, she's a host, or she needs to stream. That's where her income comes from. It's from streaming. And so she has to stream a certain amount of time, and that's her job. And then she has to go and do all these different gigs. So when I first started working with her, it was, how do we find the right people to work with Jasmine in order to speed up her process and not waste her time? Because she has a creative vision that she, focuses on, and she tries to imprint onto all of her work. And she does a majority of the work still, but she will push off some of the work off to an editor or something like that. I don't know how much what the split is anymore for her. It's only what she can't do, because Jasmine's a workaholic. So she's very, I would say, and invested in her own creative vision. And that's who she is as a person, which makes her so fascinating to talk to and work with. But she's right there.
You sort of have to be, you have to have a little bit of that. I mean, she does. And it's funny because I see these folks in the TTRPG space. There are times where I'm like, I just make videos. Like, what's the fact that anybody watches my stuff is still like jarring, You're
still getting used to it.
I talked about this on Twitter briefly. I got recognized in public.
Oh yeah, that's weird, isn't it? I got recognized too in public. I was like, how do you know me?
And it was in a tabletop gaming place.
Yeah.
Apropos. But it was so weird, and it was amazing. But I don't have a huge audience.
Yeah.
And I say that, like, in my brain, I'm still the Kimchi that has 100 subscribers,
Yeah.
and like, the 50 diehards that always watch the videos. And I've got like, I am annoyingly close to 4,000 subscribers right now.
Oh yeah. You'll probably be over by the time this one comes out in December. But you should subscribe to Legal Kimchi and check out some of those videos.
Yeah. And if you would like more videos after you've seen them, and we're like, you know what? I wish this person would quit their job and start making more of these videos I love. Patreon.com/LegalKimchi.
There you go. There you go. It'll be in the show description for sure. Let's talk about bioessentialism. This is one of the first videos I saw of yours. Maybe I saw the wheelchair accessibility one beforehand, but I remember this one especially was one that grew your channel by quite a bit. If you don't mind going into like what initially inspired it and what your challenges were in both making it and looking back on it, how it has sort of shaped your channel.
Well, it was inspired by which is weird considering the origin of orcs.
Which, for our audience who doesn't know.
Okay, so the origin of orcs, in the Tolkien sense, created the orcs, based them Mongolians, specifically the Mongol hordes, which, side note, horde is simply the Mongol Turkic word.
Wow, that was a fun fact.
That's why they keep calling them the Mongol hordes. It's not just because horde is a mass of people. No, right. It's just a different languages word for army.
Nice, okay.
And it's not conjecture. This is not, I see parts of Mongolian culture in the orcs. He literally said it in a letter that he based the orcs on Mongols. Mongolians, and so this is, and it's funny because you still have people who are Tolkien apologists on this saying, no, he didn't mean it like that. And I was like, he said that he meant it like that. Like, I don't understand what.
Gonna argue with the ghost of J.R.R. Tolkien.
and because people, if you are seen to be attacking or slighting people's heroes, they get weird.
Right.
And I saw people in denial about the way that racial tropes or racism plays in and out of fantasy literature and D&D as a byproduct of that. And I was like, wait a minute, like the evidence is there. We just need to go into it and talk about it. What's funny about that video, I never know if a video is going to pop off and explode. I don't know which videos are going to do great or which do poorly. I've made guesses previously. None of them have panned out.
Yeah.
So I didn't know it was going to be a thing. I tried to make something that I thought was interesting, put a catchy thumbnail on it, and call it a day.
Yeah.
It seemed to, kind of touch a nerve. We have this cyclical conversation in TTRPGs about the whole inherently evil trope. I have yet to hear an argument in favor of it that is compelling. And so many people bring up like, well, devils are clearly inherently evil, right? It's in their being. Because, like, let's talk about devils and angels, right?
Right.
Let's talk about that.
Who determined
from a person who has a background in studying theology with the Jesuits?
Mm-hmm.
I've researched this sort of thing. I've studied this sort of thing, and the basic story of it. Who was the devil?
He was
right?
an angel. Yeah.
He was an angel.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently that didn't make him inherently good. And his devil nature was because of his actions, not because of something inherent to himself.
Right. Not something that they were born with.
So even in the circumstance of the story of angels and demons, bioessentialism still doesn't fit into the story. It's so much easier for the heroes because there's such a catharsis when you kill something that's inherently evil. Have you ever played Wolfenstein? Because you feel real good shooting up Nazis in that game. Like, it's fantastic. Like, my father and I have this sort of joke. Nothing better than offing Nazis.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up in the age where the World War II video game was the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you. I feel more comfortable with the idea of killing Nazis than I do with killing some sort of, even an animal, anything, a person, a type, a category of human. The very idea of, but they're not humans. Okay, like pit bulls, people don't like pit bulls, right? They say they're inherently violent. I wouldn't be comfortable killing a bunch of pit bulls. But if you lined up 10 Nazis in a row, well, hand it over. Let's go. I would go to town. It doesn't make sense. And it's one of those things where throughout every argument I've ever seen, I've never heard something that was compelling as to why to include bioessentialism. So I was just like, okay, I can talk about this for 40 minutes. And so I did. And it struck a nerve. Some people hated it. Some people said that I was being too sensitive.
Right.
Which I always found hilarious.
You're a snowflake.
And you and I both know this simple truth. Marginalized people get called overly sensitive, and yet the amount of garbage that we take on a daily basis that we just let go because it's not worth it, would crush so many people who are calling us snowflakes. It's like, look, I'm just bringing this up sometimes for your safety, because if you keep doing this, I can't guarantee it.
Yeah, that's pretty much that's daily life, I guess.
If you got really upset and made a scene every time someone did the slightest thing, right, then you'd have no time to do anything, right?
Exactly. I'd be just being fucking mad all the time. Yeah. I'd just be fucking mad. Yeah, that's why a lot of the time I don't wear like a dress or anything out in public, because I can still be clocked like as a trans person, and I don't want to have that conversation with people. I don't like to have people staring at me. People stare at me all the time in public, even when I'm not dressing like a woman, because I'm starting to look like a woman and I confuse people. It's people fucking stare at me in public, so it's kind of weird. It feels weird.
Yeah, and if you yelled at everybody who stared at you longer than was appropriate, is there an appropriate time frame?
Yeah,
but you don't. You let it go, and you let so much stuff go.
My girlfriend tells me the wildest shit. Because she's isolated, right? So she's a barista that works in like one of those parking lot places. So she's alone, is my point, most of the time, which gives people the free reign to say the wildest shit to her, like, all the time. Everything from, like, the most vile thing to, like, sexual harassment, to people trying to grab her, to, like, calling her, like, weird stuff like chocolate goddess. Over the top cringe. But it's like, you know, every day I asked her, like, hey, what are these weird things that people are telling me? And she did it for a week, and she just told me, like, the weird shit that people tell her. I'm just like, oh my God, like, these weirdos in the woods, like, think that they have a chance. Like, with that line, that's their line. Like, I don't know. I don't get it, but
I don't understand it. But yeah, so like the bioessentialism came out of a very similar genesis as the wheelchair accessible dungeon video, in that I saw a bunch of people making really bad arguments online. Like, if you make a bad argument online, I'm probably going to make a video about it, because that bothers me. It's
good
like
content.
it's like a tickle in my brain where I'm just like, you're wrong, and I want to go like 35 minutes onto why you're wrong. And you know, I like presenting in the video format because, one, I think it's more fun. Two, it's not directed. It's not like a bad person because of your argument, and I'm going to get into a Twitter argument directly with you where no one else is going to pay attention to this except for you and me, because that's going to resolve anything. Pretty careful with my language. And what's telling, a ton of people, well, you said that if I inherently evil orcs in my game that I'm racist. No, I actually said that you weren't. Like, I specifically state this doesn't necessarily make you racist. You clearly weren't paying attention. So it's like a dead giveaway, because those who aren't paying attention, those who hold on to preconceived notions that they have, they'll give themselves away in the first comment, first tweet. Clearly you didn't see it. Clearly you didn't watch it.
You just made an assumption and you felt defensive because maybe you feel a little bit of guilt.
Because my point isn't to make people feel guilty. My point isn't to attack people. There are other people out there that'll do that. Whatever. That's not my thing. My thing that I'm trying to do is have people examine the things that they enjoy. I'm not here to tell you to stop enjoying what you enjoy. I'm here to tell you why you should think about the things that you enjoy. Okay? I love Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I could go off on why that's problematic.
I'm starting to think about the reasons,
Okay? It's still my favorite movie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And there's tons of stuff that's awful with the whole series, but I still love it. And I don't get defensive when people say all the different stuff. Oh, what about this? Oh, this is vile. Nah, that's really vile. The Nazi's head melts at the end, and that's amazing. Like,
that's kind of like the same line as, like, along the same lines of when you enjoy trash reality TV, you know what it is. You make no compromise about what it is. Like,
and that's the thing. Like, examine it, understand it in the context. But I have a hard time trying to take joy away from people unless it's something that's hurtful to others. You know, to hit some of the greatest hits, if you would, like when I was talking about representation.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a video on representation and why it matters in fantasy and RPGs and entertainment and stuff. You know, it's one of those things where, again, I get a lot of hateful comments. You know, I got one recently that was said something like, I think it's sad that you can't relate to a character on a show unless they're the same race as you. And I was like, so that's like nowhere in that video do I even come close to saying that.
Okay. Yeah, it's like, why are you projecting that onto me? Like,
a bit of projection, don't you think? Like, that's this is a moment where you should look at your own comment and do some self-evaluation.
Turn the comments into a mirror.
Because number one, I'm mixed. I have never seen someone like me on a movie, and I probably never will. How many Puerto Rican Koreans are there in the world? I know of two. They're my brothers.
Yeah.
You know, and in addition to that, like, that was nowhere in it. And all I was talking about is the importance of diverse representation and what it does. And part of that was what it does white audiences, the seed that is planted in their minds as well. And I think that commenter was a little uncomfortable with the seed that had planted in his head.
Yeah, and people don't like to confront things by themselves. They want to lash out. They want to blame other people. Yeah.
And you know, the video immediately preceding that, where I was talking about the history of POC in Europe, Black Elves, and all that sort of stuff. It's amazing. I pull out all of these different historical research, cite all my sources, which I do in every video. You talked about the extensive bibliographies beforehand.
Yeah.
I try to include the stuff that I'm talking about. Oddly enough, I have yet to receive a negative comment that cites a single source. Unsurprising.
Yeah, of course. You think reply guys know what a bibliography is?
And here's the thing. I'm like, if you have alternative sources, let me know. Like, I included a bit inside of the POC in Europe video where I was talking about the concept of Black Vikings, because I saw some places that were talking about Black Vikings. Oh, these existed Black Vikings. However, I found what sources they were citing and found some books that they were citing, bought those books, actually read those books. And I was like, this seems like a misinterpretation of the statement here. Oh, that comes with a misunderstanding of Scandinavian history. So, to the extent of my knowledge, to the extent of the research that I could do, there were no Black African Vikings. Okay. And I put that in there to show, look, I'm not just saying stuff because I think it was cool. Because what would be cooler than Black African Vikings? I can't think of much.
That does sound pretty cool. Yeah.
And I would love to have included that. That would have been an amazing thing to include in that video. But I couldn't, because I couldn't find enough evidence that it was true. So I didn't include it. I only included things were pretty verifiable as true. And yet people still tried to actually, on some of the points that I was making. And I was like, okay, cite your source.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is, it's easy and you get perhaps a bit of a release, a cathartic effect, or a bit of dopamine when you feel like you were telling someone and they believe you. And you stand from a point of authority, even if you've done nothing to earn that authority. And that's a lot of what the replies are online, I think.
That's another thing about content creation that people should know. People are going to hate on you, especially if you're a marginalized creator. It's so funny because I find myself in these D&D discords with other D&D YouTubers, most of which are pretty cool people, some of which are dirtbags, most of which are pretty cool people. Like 90% of the folks that are making content that you probably follow are probably decent people. Rest assured. Yay. I kept hearing these stories of like, oh man, I haven't got a negative comment yet. Oh, I can't wait till I get some troll. And I was like, I got a troll in my second video when I had less than 100 subscribers. And that troll posted consistently vile things on nearly every one of my videos.
They subscribe just to hate.
And they seek you out. Okay. Like other marginalized creators had commented about this person before. Or that person. Like, it's common names that keep. My bioessentialism video had negative comments on it before it was released.
Okay.
It was set to premiere the next day. People were already downvoting it, already putting negative comments, already had a Twitter thread hating on it before the video was released. No one had seen it but me. I didn't even have because you're right that my channel has boomed 3 times. One of the videos was the lawsuit that Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman had against Wizards of the Coast because of Dragonlance. Yeah. Because I was like, hey, a lawsuit. I know how those go. And it's a contract view. I have things that I could provide. Because I literally saw another D&D YouTuber say something like, my dad was an attorney, so I know how these things go. And he got 80% of it wrong.
Nice.
And I was like, oh my goodness. No, this is garbage. But, that was a small bump. The Wheelchair Accessible Dungeon was another bump. And then Bioessentialism was another bump. And every one of those have been accompanied by large amounts of trolls and stuff like that, finding videos and saying their nonsense. Now, that's not to say that the majority of comments are positive. The majority of comments are still positive because people are like, oh, wow, this is a really good argument. I mean, you got to have a certain thick skin. You got to laugh it off. But it was funny because I'm in these discords and they were like, yeah, the D&D community is so supportive.
For you, yeah.
As I look around and I'm the only person of color in this discord, how many, marginalized individuals, how many people of color do you see making videos, essays with their face on the screen? Now, let's get those. And let's cut out, for instance, the African-American population, because there's a good amount of solid creators that are starting to come out that show their faces on the screen. I love that, and we should have more. But how many non-white and then non-black content creators do you know making video essays who show their face on the screen?
Oh my god. Video essays or just D&D?
Let's go with video essays first.
Video essays, okay. Gosh.
Exactly. Moving into the...
No. Am I allowed to? Did you say no black people? Right, black people.
Well, when you say it like that, it sounds
that's terrible. I do watch a few black videos
because I can name FD Signifier. I can name T1J. I can name Khadijah.
Yeah, Khadijah.
So there's a couple. There's not a ton, and there should be
Right.
more, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can at least name a few. But when you take out that small group of amazing Black creators and look at other POC groups, like how many Asians?
Yeah.
How many?
Banana Chan just started doing a lot of educational content.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and you should check her out if you love TTRPGs. She has some great content on YouTube.
I've subscribed and I've boosted the channel both on my YouTube and on Twitter. So yeah, awesome stuff. But like it took a second, right? And how many are in the TTRPG space? Like Asians represent, Jasmine obviously. It starts getting more in the generalized TTRPG space, but how much of that is the fact that we seek these out? Like I intentionally look for folks like that. You know, it's one of those instances where I had the option early, like I was brainstorming about my channel. I was like, I'm going to put my face on screen. And it's not because of a vanity issue, although everyone who creates YouTube content is an attention hungry.
Yeah.
It's like, you just want attention. Of course, that's why I'm putting videos out on the internet. If I wouldn't put videos out on the internet.
Exactly.
Like that's a given. But I wanted to make sure there was a face that people would be like, oh, because I've been mistaken for a white person because of my voice.
Oh.
Because I didn't sound ethnic enough.
Oh dear.
It's amazing what type of comments you'll get as a person with a phone-based job prior to being an attorney. I worked in a child support office. Phones, that's sort of like a child support. And you know, the amount of things that people will say to you because they don't realize
you're a person of color.
You're a person of color.
Yeah.
Think, oh, it's just between us type stuff.
Now, you're cool, right? Anonymous white guy over the phone.
So I wanted to make absolutely sure that my face was there. And it probably, you know, did it hurt my channel? Probably. I don't know. I'd like to think that it didn't. There's a cynical part of me that thinks that it did. But I wanted to make sure that it was out there. I wanted to make sure that there was an example because I didn't see one. So
yeah, I think that's got to be tough. But not something that you haven't dealt with professionally before, I think. Because I think we've talked before, and you being one of the few people of color where you work, right? Yeah.
In my previous job, I was one of only 2 Asians in the department.
Yeah.
In my current job, I'm the only Asian in my team. I'm also I'm one of 2 Hispanics on my team. But yeah, I mean, this team is much more diverse.
Okay.
It's just, you know, there are not a lot of Asians in the legal field in Texas. You know? I walked into a lot of courtrooms with a lot of people staring.
Yeah.
You know, I literally walked into a courtroom one time and this older white attorney looked at me and was like, oh, look at the big city attorney. I was just like,
wow.
Wow, this is really happening. All right, Colonel Sanders, let's do this.
Oh my God. Oh.
So and I it wasn't like my suit was that nice. And yeah, I did come from San Antonio and it's a pretty big city. You know, it's
that was because he wanted to say the other thing.
Yeah.
But
we're in the courtroom.
Wow. Yeah, but you're in a courtroom. And holy shit.
So yeah, I mean, it's put it out as something that's like, this is the reason. But you know, just be mindful of that. If you're from a marginalized community and you want to get into content creation, people are going to be mad at you for existing. Yeah.
I remember, especially it was kind of weird, like making that transition for me being a pro GM, because like when I started seriously in January, I was one of the few like openly trans people in the space. And I was one of the openly queer people. And that's what people always comment to me when they either come play with me or they talk to me because of my platform about being a pro GM and like advancing like your career and stuff. All of the top GMs are like cishet white guys, right? So one of the first things I wanted to do was to like try and reach out and find more marginalized people, help them make a living doing this. And that's why I started my first like cohort for that. Some of whom you know and have worked with, like VJ. But like a big part of is undergoing, or like there's pockets of TTRPG that have yet to like take that first step of like actually being in an environment that is welcoming to marginalized people. And that's because they either haven't tried or if they've tried, they've done it in such a way is kind of toxic and like not actually good, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
If you figured out what I'm putting down, like,
hey, look at this marginalized person. We're cool, right?
I've been invited on a podcast before, and they were like, we're looking to diversify our guests. They had 60 episodes. Guess how many people were not masculine presenting white people out of 60? There were 2 white women on there. There was 2 white women, 58 dudes. No, I'm not your diversity hire for that.
Yeah,
You've picked your path.
It is frustrating. It is frustrating because like a lot of my stuff, specifically, look at me, I'm marginalized. Like I do have a video specifically about being mixed race that comes from my personal experience. One video. Okay. And the rest of it isn't about that. You know, I touch on notions of race or LGBTQ issues and things like that. It's not like I'm trying to say, hey, look at me, or support me because I am, you know, Latino or Asian or whatever. Support me because the content is good. If you want to support more content from Latin or you know, Asian or whatever, then yeah, like, hi, raise my hand. You know, I think there's this idea all we ever do is talk about ourselves. That's not the case. I get tired of it too. I get tired of talking about the plight of the Asian or the plight of the Hispanic or whatever. I love this game. I love talking about stuff. I love, you know, diving into issues and being analytical. And I think that presents in what I do. But it's hard sometimes because there is this little tickle in your brain that asks questions, you know, and that's part of privilege that I think people don't understand. One, that it's a horribly named concept, but two, the privilege is the advantage of not having that voice in the back of your head. Like for that email, like you were just talking about, they explicitly told you that you were being reached out to because they wanted to get that diversity hire, so to speak. And when they don't say that openly, but you look back at the back catalog and it's, you know, 60 or 58 monochromatic cisgendered white males.
Look like the president list. Like,
yeah. You have that voice in the back of your head. You're curious, you know, and you don't want to assume that that's why. And then you have this internal struggle. It's like, should I do it? Use the exposure. It's really good. I don't want to be a token. That's pretty bad. Because ultimately with any sort of content creator, you want to be recognized for your content. You want to be recognized for what you're putting the work, but you got to worry about stuff like whether or not your face on the thumbnail is going to be a negative. That's exhausting. I don't want to think about that. I just want to make stuff. I want to make cool stuff. I want people to watch it.
Speaking of cool stuff, let's talk about your political power. That was hyper fascinating to me and what inspired it.
Okay, so what inspired it was my background. So I have a degree in political science. When post people hear about political science, they keep thinking about like, oh, so you read about capitalism and communism and Marx and Engels and John Locke and Thomas Hobbes and Leviathan and all that. I was like, no, we studied, like, political science is a wide field with so many things included into it. I studied empirical political science, specifically with the direction towards international relations and security, because I went to college in that like directly post 9/11 world, right?
Right. Yeah.
When I think of politics or a political game, this is a very different thing than what people think it is. And power and the way political power operate is something that I think most people don't understand.
Absolutely, I agree.
Not only, okay, so it was also a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. I'm gonna take the mask off for a second. Look at my channel, and I've seen people do this. Oh, I don't like D&D. I'm not gonna watch this guy's channel. I would love to tell you that I have a D&D YouTube channel. What I actually have is a video essay channel that has a tendency to use TTRPGs to teach people about topics they need to know about. It's just a vehicle that I use to deliver the message. My representation video has very little to do with TTRPGs.
Yeah.
It's about the concept of representation. My political video was a mix. It was me kind of dipping my toes into both because I was like, people need to understand how political power works, both because it makes their games more interesting and because it makes politics understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't understand how political power actually works, not the stories that people tell you on the news, not what politicians are spewing at you during the debates or an election season, but how it actually operates as a system, it makes watching real world politics make more sense. And it's one of those things where I get frustrated when I talk about politics with most people, because they'll say something and I was like, well, none of that matters. It's like, how do you think that this issue that is the most important thing to me doesn't matter? And I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm not saying that it doesn't actually matter to you. I'm not saying that it's not an important issue. I'm just saying that when it comes to elections or political power, that's pretty meaningless.
Yeah.
Nobody actually cares. Okay, I'll use an example, and I don't know if this is getting too political, but this kind of ties into what I'm talking about.
No, go for it.
Okay. The Democratic Party during the last election in the United States pushed the idea that we needed to vote for more Democrats because we needed to pass protections for like Roe v. Wade to codify it in law. The immediate question is, you had the House and the Senate and the presidency. Why didn't you do it when you had all the power? Because they wanted to retain power. Because the issue doesn't actually matter. But it does matter. Of course it matters. It's an incredibly important issue. It's materially one of the more important issues that we deal with in American politics. What I'm saying is, it doesn't matter in the political game. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter when we're talking about political power. It's a tool to get power. You need to get power. Oh, we're not power hungry. We just want to improve the lives of our fellow human beings. You have to be power hungry to do that.
It didn't come up as an item that they would push until it could be used as a vehicle to get people to vote for them.
Like, people look at politicians and are like, oh, they're hypocrites. Is it hypocrisy? They don't actually care. Like, it's levers, it's buttons that they can push. The stories don't matter. Well, why did this, it's like, when we hear about things in history, we're told a narrative. We don't realize it. We don't think about the news as being a narrative, our history textbooks as being a narrative, but they all are. Okay. There's mechanics that are going. Okay. And everything has it. Why do we intervene in certain countries and send our military, but in other countries that are doing worse things, we don't? Well, there's a reason for that. Why is it that we get involved in some wars? Why is it that we promote certain regimes and we don't promote other regimes? Why is it that we supported this person and not that person? And on the surface, it seems hypocritical. It's like, wait a minute. The United States sent money and aid to a communist country in the 1950s? What? Weren't we supporting fascists and capitalists? Why were we supporting a communist? Because none of that actually mattered. It wasn't about capitalism, communism, fascism. What was in the interests or gaining power? That's what matters. Everything else is just the sprinkling. Everything else is just the seasoning, the story that they tell you. And so the world makes a lot more sense when you understand the mechanics of it. And your D&D world, your tabletop gaming world, also makes more sense, because there's a tickling notion in the back of your mind that understands that these kingdoms, that the city of Waterdeep, or the political structure of the Forgotten Realms, any of that, like, none of that makes any sense. And there's a part of you that understands that it's fiction because of it. There's a part of you that doesn't buy in because it's Fantasyland. And that video was sort of like, this is how it really works. And there's competing theories. I tried to explain that in anything that I do. Like, what I'm presenting is what I think is a compelling theory on empirical political science and how you can utilize it. And even so, people didn't get it. Some people didn't get it. People like the politics video did pretty well. I immediately followed that up with an international relations video, which was basically a sequel. I saw this Twitter thread of a person who started bashing the video because I had a sequence where I explained liberalism. And I think that they assumed that liberalism and being a liberal in the American political sense were the same thing. And they are not. They are wildly different concepts.
Yeah.
Because, different words have different meanings in different contexts. Mm-hmm. So, like, I was doing a juxtaposition of realism theory and liberalism as a theory of international relations. I don't know. People didn't like that one as much. And I got a lot of comments where it was like, this one hit different. This one felt different than the politics video. And I'm trying to rack my brain as to what the difference was. And I think a little bit of it is that the international relations video kind of touched on some points that made a lot of people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it made a lot of the notions, even more than the politics video, it made a lot of the notions of what we think about when we think about international relations seem silly. I don't know what to say to that. Like it's when you study politics, like I did, the world becomes a place that you understand better, but you don't like as much.
What are you working on now? What's your new video that's probably out by
Ooh.
the time this airs?
Yeah, it should be. Knock on wood, it should be out. It's revolutions.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's a video on revolutions and rebellions, how they happen, why some succeed, why most don't, and the realities of what happens when a revolution does succeed.
Yeah, I think this is something that I know a little bit about, at least in terms of like when I was studying how they worked for my job when I was in the Marine Corps, and the statistic probability that if there's a revolution or armed conflict in an area, and tell me if I'm wrong because you've just done research on this, there's a statistical probability that it's going to happen again in 10 years. And once you have it past the 10-year mark, percentage chance of it happening again drops drastically. But you need to get past 10 years of the after the revolution, or you have like another cyclical revolution. Is that true?
Well, we don't go into that specific concept, but we do talk about like why a revolution will descend into another armed conflict and why some don't. And it's very interesting. I got a couple of PhDs to be on camera through some Zoom calls. And one of them is a professor from the Naval War College.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And very generous with their time and had phenomenal conversation. And I, editing a video, it's just like, I would love to put this entire hour and a half conversation in there, but
put it on your Patreon. You should just put it unedited on your Patreon, as long as the guy's cool with it.
Maybe.
I
gotta ask. Oh, they're both. I mean, come on. They're.
I know, but like
it's the field, right? It is inundated with white males. I mean, it's not their fault, and these are just people that I happen to have connections with and were able to reach out to. But even so, they incredibly insightful, and it actually got me a little bit because the professor was like, "Yeah, I watched a couple of your videos. You're well researched. You really make some solid points." And I was just like,
yeah, War College approved. Legal Kimchi, nice. Like, feels good.
It never gets old because I've had a couple of different college professors comment or reach out to me on Twitter. This is really good. And there's a part of me that's just like, this is super elitist and it doesn't matter and all this sort of stuff. And there's another part of me that's just like,
good.
Oh, what
Take your W, Kimchi. Take your fucking W.
I'm overanalyzing the compliments at this point.
No, you just want to be in the muck with all the shit turds and the grognards. You just like, I don't deserve any of this.
Well, I think it goes back to when I was in undergraduate. I had a couple of different options, and I wanted to go to grad school, and I couldn't get a professor to write me a letter of recommendation.
Oh no!
And I had this sort of chip on my shoulder about it, and I ended up going to law school because I knew some attorneys who would write me letters of recommendation, but I didn't know professors who would write me letters of recommendation. So I couldn't get into grad school, and I went to law school instead. So I think there's just a chip on my shoulder that I didn't get my like master's degree in international relations and all that. But I think it's interesting because I think the mix of my political science background and my legal background provide an interesting analytical lens that I apply in these videos that hopefully provide something that's significant that no one else is doing.
Wow. That's, honestly, Kimchi, that's so dope. Like, people are so fucking cool, like the whole different experience that every person has, and everyone coming to your table is bringing something very unique and special. And especially like as a storyteller or as someone who can like educate other people, like, and you and I were like millennials, so we're old as fuck on the internet, right? So like we've like seen and like done a bunch of different stuff. So I just think it's really cool, like that today we live in an age for however long before we're destroyed by the downfall of Elon Musk or whatever is on the horizon. I think it's really cool that we can have such varied experiences in our lives now with globalization and stuff like that. And I think that's really cool. And I'm always very fascinated to, especially in tabletop, to learn more about people and how they got involved in their background. Because the people in tabletop are so varied. Whereas in other fields, I feel like you just kind of have that pipeline. And then that's a majority of the people in that field.
Yeah, I mean, like it's a community or a group of people connected because they like to have fun in a silly way.
Yeah.
I love tabletop. Playing pretend. Why did we ever stop doing that? I didn't stop doing that. I want my kids to continue playing pretend well into advanced age. And you're right. We're old. I feel like I'm older than 90% of the people in the TTRPG space, or the video essay space for that matter. And
I'm not judging you.
Are you going to judge me for being alive? Judge away. I had no control over this. Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I do love that people come from different backgrounds. And I think that different backgrounds provide different ways of approaching the same game. And I think that's fascinating. I mean, I look at folks like Matt Mercer and Matt Colville and Cheng and from Translator and other DMs that are out there, Jasmine, and I see these vastly different styles, and I can appreciate the talent and diverse points of view. Like, take for instance Matt Mercer. Matt Mercer. Love Matt Mercer.
Oh,
It seems like a cool guy. Phenomenal dungeon master. I don't know if I've ever want to play in his game.
Not your style.
Not my style. And a phenomenal game for the players in that game. Probably the best they could have. Not for everybody. And I think the mistake that we make sometimes, if it's not for me, it's terrible. I think Matt Mercer is a masterclass in the Matt Mercer style of DMing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He is extraordinary, and he should be viewed as such. And the fact that that game isn't for everybody is not an insult. My game isn't for everybody. I get people keep on telling me, it's like, oh, you should, I don't know if what you expect from that.
Lots of legal paperwork.
Yeah. My home games from my own players have a couple of key features. No one knows who the bad guy is. Two, nice. They're constantly confused.
Nice.
Okay. In a sort of, what do we do next? Who are we helping? I don't know.
That's some Machiavellian shit.
Like, my game is not about the soap opera drama. My game is not about the heroes overcoming the ultimate evil and saving the world. My game is, this is a real open world, and whatever you do will have an effect on the world.
You're a simulationist.
And my job as a dungeon master is to create the reaction of the world to you. And like, I don't prep adventures. I don't prep dungeons. I spend the week in between sessions. What is everybody doing now that this has happened? Well, these people don't know what's going on. So they're just going to continue with their work, but it's having a ripple effect in this particular area. And that's going to get notification back to this individual who has a certain level of power and is going to influence the events as such over the course of the next few days. Stuff like that. That's what I do as my DM prep. Intense amount of time building up the world. I know who the NPCs are. I know where the monsters are. I know where the good guys, bad guys, whomever is. And I know the various storylines that are happening. Prep anything. I just show up. It's a different style. The complaint that I've had sometimes is that there's no clear direction. Yeah. Because there is no clear direction.
That's true. You're accurate. You figured it out. You know my secret.
I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for
these inquisitive players.
And that people are confused as who the bad guy is, which I think is the wrong question. Okay. Because there's no
narrative.
The narrative is what you make of it. And I will, that isn't to say that there aren't beats, that aren't narrative moments, that there aren't things that's like hyper dramatic that are built up over time and over sessions, but it's something that's reactive and customized to the players and their actions from session to session, as opposed to me having a preconceived notion. I hate running adventure. I've realized I've tried to run mega adventures that D&D has published twice now, and both of the campaigns, they were all right in that the players were like, this is all right, but they didn't have as much fun as when I was reacting, and they had no idea what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh my goodness, pull out the notes. I can't remember this person's name. Because there are 37 different people we've met.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure there's a style of collaborative play there too that's really fostered by your style that you are like allowing to happen, because that's sort of like very deep investigative or inquisitive play. I can't prepare because I haven't built a world that in depth. So my table wouldn't support that. My table supports a narrative. My table supports like horror elements and narrative generally, depending on what I'm running. And I set tone and I have story beats like an HBO show. I don't have like a living world that you can go anywhere into anything.
Yeah, like there was one point where my players were in this fantasy kingdom that was going through a civil war and an invasion at the same time.
Oh no. Confusing.
I don't know who to help. What's going on? What's this area on the map? Because I have a map. And I was like, oh, that's the grass plains. Various monsters roam there. And the main profession is actually monster hunting, where people go and hunt them like game. Can we just like abandon this and go there? Absolutely.
Monster hunting campaign begun.
Yeah. Complete tonal shift of the campaign, complete different storyline. And they ended up not doing it, but I was like, I'm prepped for that. Like, if you want to go over there, absolutely. Because then they got like kind of used to it. And in the second campaign, they were like, what if we just left on this ship and went to somewhere completely else in the world? And I was like, yeah, go for it. And so they did it. And I was like, okay, now you're here. And these are all the different things that you learn about. Oh, and then you meet this one person at the port. And this is a different, culture that resides here. And by the way, you don't speak this language. Wait, we speak common. They don't speak Iberian common here. They speak the common of Termijana. That's a different common. Because you're in a different country now and they speak a different language with a different history, and none of you pick that one. And you could have, because I make my players, when they say, oh, I speak common, it's like, you speak the regional common of where you're born. There is no universal language here.
I think sometimes that's presented as like a barrier for getting to the story, but the way that I'm interpreting this, and correct me if I'm wrong, you really like to embrace multiculturalism and present that as a big part of the story as well.
Because they learned. And so the second campaign, some of them learned multiple forms of common.
Yeah.
And I'm loose with my language rules in that other people can, like, you can learn a language over time. It's not just like a die roll.
Right.
So that you can learn another language. I mean, if you're entrenched and you study, you can learn like basic communication, over time and stuff like that.
And that's definitely that's removing, sometimes there's mechanical barriers, there's written barriers in place because the game was originally conceived to be played a certain way. Mm-hmm. But if you want to homebrew away and do stuff like that in order to open up more possibilities with your story, then absolutely. Of course, that's a good idea.
I mean, I had a circumstance where it's like, oh, but I speak Elven. Sylvan Elven. You don't speak High Elven. And if you're on a different continent, they don't speak anything related to that type of Elven over there, because it's a different culture over here. It's not just elves. It's the elves of this nation or whatever, And maybe the elves don't have a distinctive language in this particular country because they've intermixed with all the other cultures there. They've created their own language over time because that's how cultures work. People forget Latin languages. That spans from Spain to Romania. All of the languages in between are Latin based, but they're different. And you kind of get some words and you kind of don't. But then in Romania, you cross over a few miles and they're speaking Slavic languages. So they're not even speaking, and it is a wildly different base, crossed over a river, and, like Korean Chinese. And even saying something like Chinese is like, well, which Chinese? But there's vast differences between the two languages. Vast differences. I can speak a bit of Korean. I can't even come close to understanding Mandarin. There's no relationship.
Yeah, I think it depends on your framework then, as a storyteller, how are you framing the learning of languages and how are you framing all these different cultures? If you are presenting them in such a way to be different and it is a barrier, well, what does it take to break down those barriers? What does it take to actually learn the language and experience that culture? Is that a journey that's going to be fun along the way for your players? How can you make it fun? And how can you, if you have someone who's a gamer, someone who's more of an achiever, or how are you going to make them happy at the same time? And I think that's an very interesting question when I talk to GMs who have a very different storytelling style, because I think for me, my hesitation with doing something like that deep dive is it's going to really fuck with my pacing. So for me, I would have to really carefully construct something like that. But switching to, I think this feeds perfectly into the Vineyard, our standard plug for my podcast, which you are a contributor of. If you would like to kind of tell us what you're contributing, and both parts. So we have your NPC lieutenant, the solicitor, and then we're also looking at some additional areas in contract legality. and some of the sort of ins and outs of our conversation that we had outlining contracts and how basically I've just created an American corporation.
Yeah. It was funny because you showed me the contracts that you set up. It's like, yeah, it's this evil criminal organization. And I was like, this is more lenient than a standard corporate contract. Like,
I did my best to be evil, okay, Kimchi? Like,
it's like your level of evil has nothing on reality.
It's meant to be fun, is why.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's the thing. You know, obviously, it's bringing in a little bit of my legal expertise, but in a fun way. And it's not trying to. It's trying to get it correct enough. It does feel official. It feels real because it is, but not so real. It's no longer fun.
Yeah, it's bogged down by the minutia and like, you know, role playing, you know, in the courtroom for 6 sessions. Like,
yeah. Like part of my job is literally arguing about like 2 or 3 words in a sentence for like 30 minutes because of different interpretations of what a word here or a word there says. But fine for my job, not for the game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But we do want to make sure that people are paying attention to the wording and that people are knowledgeable and that feels like an official legal document. And it kind of ties into the lieutenant because, you know, maybe it's typecasting or whatever. But so my lieutenant, as you pointed out, is a solicitor, and you had this phenomenal kind of that you provided to us, and one of it was like, what's a quote that the lieutenant would say? And the quote for the solicitor is, "I am technically correct." And isn't that the best kind of correct?
Yeah, this is the NPC that all GMs use to troll their players. This is the rule lawyers, look out. If your GM picks up the Vineyard, this is what they're going to get trolled with.
Exactly. And it was kind of designed as such because I'm not as much of a rules lawyer, oddly enough, in the actual
You mean you don't go to your fantasy game to experience the monotony of your daytime job?
Come on now. But it's I did want to create this character who is sort of a rebuttal of the rules lawyer while also patting the rules lawyer on the back a little bit because of its abilities work with technicalities, you know, because that's the whole thing with rules lawyers. They're like, well, technically speaking, you know, and it's all interpretation. And there's a reason why they call it rules lawyer, because there's a level of lawyering that goes into that. And I thought, hey, is there a way that we could mechanize technicalities? Is there a way that we could gamify a technicality as a part of it? And I think that idea was sort of the solicitor. It's funny that you even mentioned this. I was talking to my partner about this like a few hours ago, and she asked like, what did you create? And I was like, well, I created this thing with the solicitor, and I explained the powers and all of that. And she's like, that's a really fun idea.
What Kimchi is specifically talking about in regards to the stat block and like a lot of the powers associated with the solicitor is that there's a unique feature, a unique ability that the solicitor has called the word of law. And if they use the word of law, whatever they say actually true for a period of time that they determine. So for instance, the solicitor determines no piercing weapon can harm me. That is actually how the world shapes itself around the solicitor due to their power, the word of law. So you can no longer harm the solicitor with piercing weapons.
I think the example that I initially thought of was no metals can touch me.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, no metals, like, yeah.
How do you, as a fighter, like you still get your spells and all that sort of stuff, but how do you, as a fighter, someone where metals can't touch them? Because it's not like, it's like, oh, but magical items can hit. No. Magical items are still metal. They still don't touch. So how do you solve that problem? Like, let's say you have this giant metal hammer. You wrap it in a towel, it's no longer being touched by metal. So like, it's a technicality to get around the statement of the word of law. So it creates this thing for DMs. They can create a statement that appears to be impossible to overcome. Mm-hmm. And then the rules lawyer is like, well, technically speaking, and that's the player. That's the player that's going to save the whole party.
Yeah. Finally, they have risen to power.
So it's like I said, it's the rebuttal and also the, you know, pat on the back for the rules lawyer, because the way to defeat the solicitor is through the technicality. And I think it allows a certain level of freedom to the DM because you're going to know your players, hopefully. You can create this instance that is tailor-made for your own party's rules lawyer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a fun concept, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that's utilized and seeing the comments and the feedback, especially for that. And another part of it's really the crux, the supplement in a lot of ways, is the contracts and the freedom that we want to give people while they're sort of designing these campaigns or choosing to input the Vineyard. The supplement is really designed to be able to be used as little or as much as someone would like. So we have everything from the control of necromancy through the Vineyard, which is sort of funneled through these people who are going to make you sign a contract in order to acquire a diamond. And that contract states like, hey, this is the catch with the diamond. This diamond might only resurrect you for 24 hours. It's like a payday loan.
And that's another thing where part of the reason why I love the concept of the supplement and what I've been able to see from the other creators who are all phenomenally talented is, like I said before, this is the type of thing that I could plop into my world, because it's not like a huge overarching hard narrative campaign, but I could so easily grab the Vineyard and put it into my world and have it have a ripple effect across it. Personally, I can't wait till this thing comes out so I can just do that. So yeah. I think this is the type of supplement that translates really well to different styles of gameplay, because it gives you the plot hooks, it gives you the ideas, you can have these little adventures that interact with them, you have the contracts, you have all the tools you need. Go into a more formalized structure and build it out like you do. Be more freewheeling and kind of open world, like in my game. So, I mean, they can interact with them. They may never interact with them. They may see the after effects of someone else's contract going wrong and then decide to investigate it themselves. You know, it's just, there's so much possibility with it. And it doesn't tie you down to a certain style either.
We're including locations, and then we're including those plots. We are looking at including the adventure introductions. The full adventures, I think, will be a separate either supplement or stretch goal. We're looking at stretch goal right now, and I'm just ecstatic about the people that we have lined up for those full adventures should we reach those stretch goals. And
how did you do that, by the way? I keep looking at the people involved in this thing, and I'm just like, why am I in the room with these people? This is amazing.
Cold emails. Lots of cold emails. It was mostly just like, I think, and this is, okay, we're going to go tangent, TTRPG business. So really, to do business within any like freelance market, I think a majority of it is like, okay, what do freelancers need? Freelancers need money. They would like respect, but they don't need respect, because sometimes they'll work jobs that they don't like for more money, right? And then sometimes they'll work for like prestige or something like that. And a lot of the time it's just like, are they cool, or do they like the people that are involved? What do the people involved say? A lot of the time it's really just momentum based, I think, for business in a lot of ways. And TTRPG is no different. So even though I haven't run a major project before, because I was lucky enough to have a good working relationship with Michaela Ebel, it really opened up a lot of doors for me. Because I had a good working relationship with Jasmine, that means when I emailed Gabe Hicks about it, Gabe Hicks knew who I was and responded and said, yeah, this sounds dope. And then because Gabe Hicks was on the project, it just opens all these other doors. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's one of those things where it's very momentum based. And I honestly emailed a bunch of people not expecting anybody to get back to me, but everyone said yes. So now everybody's in the book.
Joke's on you.
Yeah, joke's on me. Now I'm producing this fantastic product. But yeah, about like the solicitor and all of that stuff, I am super excited about the things that we're going to provide people to use at their tables, including the contracts. And low key, this is interesting for you, especially Kimchi and perhaps our listeners. I talked with our manufacturer. They're going to do contracts. We're going to have pamphlets of rip-outable contracts with parchment, with the print of like the generic, like the boilerplate, and then you can write in what you need. So we're going to have like stuff like that as part of like the offering as a value add as well.
Oh my goodness, that's what I miss about modern D&D supplements is the little stuff like that.
Yeah.
The tokens, the rip out papers and stuff. Oh
yeah, we're also looking at doing like fancy quill pens and stuff for the contracts to be signed with, and so just silly stuff like that like thematically really brings players in, and of course VTT options and stuff like that. But like, you know, we gotta think about like the actual stuff that needs to get manufactured. All the VTT stuff, that's way easy as far as like delivering the product, you know, just email it to people. So
will there be tiny vials of red ink?
I mean, maybe. That's an interesting idea. I don't know. I don't know if our manufacturer produces tiny vials of red ink. But we'll have to take a look.
I just made the product marginally more expensive tonight.
No, I'd have to take a look. I don't know. We're gonna have to look into like all of that though and see how things buff out. But yeah, Kimchi, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so fun. A long while. Even if this gets edited down, I think it's still going to be like 90 minutes at least. So that's perfect because I love talking with you. This was great. Before we break here, do you want to talk about some of the stuff that you would like to link? We'll put it in the description.
As I mentioned before, I make video essays over on YouTube, youtube.com/LegalKimchi, and you can find me on Patreon, patreon.com/LegalKimchi. It's one of those things where, look, I'm not telling you to donate to the Patreon unless you have the means to do so and would like to support that type of content. I'll be making the videos regardless. It just helps me out. It helps me, you know, justify the time and effort because these things are huge time sinks. And I hope that it comes out in the final product. It's content that I think will make you think in the TTRPG space and outside of it. You know, I am planning on doing videos that aren't necessarily related to TTRPGs as well. I'll always be doing videos in TTRPGs, but, you know, just whatever topics interest me, tickle my fancy. So if you like that, if you like deep, thoughtful, analytical content from YouTube, it's so helpful. Little things like just subscribing. It's free to you and it makes my day.
And leave a nice comment.
Like, comment, and subscribe. Smash the like button, folks.
You're the last YouTuber I'm bringing on this podcast. I'm just kidding. All right. Thanks, folks. Yeah, I'll see you next time.